sounds.
5 Live Boxing.
So the AJ build-up continues here. Anthony Joshua fights against Jermaine Franklin at the O2 on Saturday night. It's been a big week. We've heard from just about every single person. And today I've got a bit of time to sit down, leisurely, bit more time, relaxed, over a bite to eat with the promoter, Eddie Hearn. I'm Steve Bunce, and this is 5 Live Boxing. We've been in a swanky hotel in New York. We've been in a very swanky conference room in Dublin. Now we're in possibly one of the swankiest hotels in London. I'm not even sure if I'm allowed to give them a plug. I know it won't earn me a free meal. They don't have free meals inside this place. Eddie,
do you like sushi, Bunsen?
I love sushi.
Oh, good. We've got some coming in a minute.
Well, I hope
all these
so.
places, they cost a fortune to hire, and we never got any food. I'm like, guys, where's the... Oh, the food was expensive.
So there's no rubbish sandwiches here like there was in the old days of press conferences.
No,
So
just sushi.
No pickled onions, rubbish sandwich, cut pork pies.
That's what we want, though.
There'll be a platter of sushi coming, won't there?
Yes, there will.
We can have some fun with that. Listen, we have some fun anyway. Eddie, first of all, we're getting very close to AJ's return. We're going to hear from AJ on 5 Live on Friday. I was with him earlier this week, and I like what I see. I like that little bit of steel in his eyes. I like that little bit of intensity.
You always say that, though.
No.
You always say, I like what I see from AJ.
And sometimes I'm wrong.
Yeah.
I'll hold my hands up. Hey, listen, I'm the man that thought he could have nicked it against Usyk.
Yeah.
You should have seen the look your dad gave me at ringside. He went, Buncey, are you sure?
I got in the ring that night in the Usyk second fight, and all his team went to me, what do you reckon, we got it? And I was like, no. And then they went, Buncey says we have. Buncey said it's close. I was like, it's not. I said, it was. I said, after 9 rounds, I had you up.
No.
I said, but you lost every round.
Yeah, I thought
10, 11, 12.
I did hear I got a few name checks on that day. And I've taken a lot of stick for that. But funny enough, last weekend, I invited Richie Woodlow over to my house, and I trust Richie implicitly. And we sat and watched it. And he was just shaking his head at me. So, I hold my hands up. I got it wrong on the night. And when I've watched it again...
115, 113.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm big enough to look at that. But you were out with him. And how's he been this week? Because we're moving through the week. He's been back 5 or 6 or 7 days now. You've been around him a little bit more. I love the fact that it's like Derek and Derek and Derek and Derek only kind of thing. I like that.
I think a lot of the stuff that he's been saying, which is ask Derek, whatever Derek says, is quite unique. And that kind of goes back to the days of Rob McCracken. And I feel, like you say, he always seems good on fight week. I mean, sometimes a little bit aggy, sometimes a little bit short, but seems relaxed. I think he's put in the hard work. He's comfortable with what he's done. It all comes down to fight night, really. Yeah. I mean, we can like what we see. We can like how he walks. We can like how he talks. But everything's going to come down to the bright lights of the O2 arena. And a lot of pressure. I'm feeling like there's a lot of pressure on this fight for him because he's putting that pressure on himself. He's coming out with things like, if I lose, I think I'm done. And that's a lot of pressure for a fighter. No, it depends what level you want to box at. I mean,
that's the difference.
People keep saying to me, that's the kind of $24 million question this week is, if he loses, is he finished? And the answer is, if he loses, his world title ambitions are finished for now. And he wants to be in the game to regain the world heavyweight title. So it will be a tough road back. There's no doubt. He's lost his last 2, albeit to Alexander Usyk, but he should be beating Jermaine Franklin if he thinks he can compete with the Furies and the Wilders of this world and try and become world heavyweight champion again.
Do you think he needs to beat Franklin comprehensively, viciously, inside the distance? Or do you think it's just get some nice rounds and beat him comfortably? What's your gut feeling?
I'll take the win, but I think it's about momentum. When we talk about the Fury fight and those kind of fights, there's a difference between winning in a solid performance and me standing in the ring after going, Fury, Wilder, etc., and a performance that makes the public say, give me that fight now. And when the public say, give me that fight now, there is so much pressure on both people to make the fight. And I just feel like a good performance, a dominant performance, and a statement knockout would put so much pressure on other champions and other big names in the division to fight him, and would also create a big pot of money, which would lead to a very difficult decision for some people.
Now, with regards to a difficult decision for some people, I read somewhere that you said that you'd spoken to George Warren, part of Queensberry, who have obviously rights to promote Fury in the UK. Those were preliminary conversations, or were they a little bit more than preliminary?
Yeah, I mean, I had a conversation actually with Jeff Powell from the Daily Mail at the bottom of the lift at the media event, and I saw quotes from me and words that I've never even used in my life. So, I mean. What I said to Jeff Powell is what I said to every member of the media, which was we had an agreement in principle before of the structure of a deal. And if AJ comes through this fight, I'll be speaking to George Warren to see if there's any legs to progress that conversation
So
again.
you hadn't spoke to George last week?
I've spoken to George, and we both agreed that the worst thing we can do in this situation is start talking to the fighters who probably wouldn't believe this fight could get done. So this is a behind-the-doors exercise by myself and George Warren, if they want to, and if AJ wins on Saturday in style, to see if there's something worth presenting to the fighters. Because I think Fury will go, wow, I've been there before. AJ will go, wow, I've been there before, rubbish. It's up to us to do our job behind the scenes, without Instagram, without all that kind of stuff. Because,
that'd be nice.
Like I said, if the performance comes from AJ on Saturday, that fight's going to be hard to stop.
Yeah, I agree with you there completely. And just as a reminder to people listening and saying, I've heard this all before, we may have heard it all before, but we were going to Saudi Arabia last summer, weren't we? That was a done deal until we had the results from the tribunal, basically, that said that Deontay Wilder, just whenever it was,
that
18
deal
months
was
ago,
done. Everyone had agreed the contract. So, in the past, there's always been things that have stopped the fight happening. In Saudi Arabia that time,
2021,
the Wilder arbitration at the end of last year, time. Yeah. AJ just lost at the end of August. Fury wanted to fight him December 3rd. AJ had niggles, didn't have a trainer fully. But also wanted the fight. I want to make that clear. This time, if AJ wins on Saturday, he doesn't have an opponent scheduled. Fury doesn't have an opponent scheduled. Fury doesn't have a mandatory. AJ doesn't have a belt. There really isn't that much in the way of it other than ego, a little bit of politics. But like I said, we've had those conversations at the back end of last year, and it was only time that stopped us. So we'll see. I don't want to get people excited, but it all really comes down to this Saturday, in all honesty.
And is it fair to say that those two fights, the one in 2021 and the potential one at the end of last year, they didn't collapse in acrimony? There was no nastiness. They just collapsed because one was done by the hearing, and one was done by the arbitration, and one was done because really AJ wasn't ready for. Wouldn't have been ready for
the
December.
First one was done because of the arbitration. The second one was time, was a bit of ego on social media, and then probably a realisation, actually, I don't even think you're going to make this date. Fury, we wanted December 17. For some reason, Fury said December 3 or no fight. Josh accepted. I felt it was much too close, but my instructions were make the fight, and eventually it fell through, and here we are. But who knows whether those talks can reopen again.
And might that be, finally, let's leave the speculation aside, but one more piece of speculation. Might that be sort of towards the end of the summer? Would that be the plan?
Yeah, I see. I want AJ to fight 3 times this year.
That'd be lovely.
Obviously, if the Fury fight's there, the timing can be flexible. But really, Fury's problem right now is he probably did want to fight end of April, early May, and he has no fight scheduled. So he's not going to want to wait till September, October, or a time that might particularly suit the Middle East. So we'll have to see. Look, I think at least myself and George Warren phone each other.
Talking.
We speak. Yeah. And we would both like to make that fight. Of course we would. It would be the biggest fight of all time in this sport. Both globally, I believe, and particularly in this country. So we'd be keen to get it over the line.
Yeah, and I think it's a fight that... Well, talking to AJ the other day and talking to Fury last year, I think it's a fight he wants, and I think it's a fight that the British public would really warm to. I'm disappointed, just like I'm sure you were, that the Usyk-Fury fight fell through, but I'm also amazed that for 10 days there it was on. When everyone, we knew it was off. Then it was confusing. It was back on for for 10 days.
I was like, wow, Frank Warren put a tweet out saying big news coming. I was thinking, wow, have they actually done it? It was 6 weeks away. Fury came up with all these ridiculous demands. Usyk, is a man of principle. It was just wild. But there's a couple of things that people don't really talk about. Number one is when AJ boxed Usyk, the split, as dictated by the governing body, was, I think it was 75-25. Usyk was a mandatory challenger with no belts, right? And now he beat AJ twice, won the unified World Heavyweight Championship, and was willing to take only 30%.
5%
to
more
fight,
than that.
yeah, as the champion. And when people say, like, Frank Warren says, no one knows who Usyk is. I mean, he came over here, he knocked out Tony Bellew, huge pay-per-view night.
Massive
he beat
night.
Derek Chisora behind closed doors, but still a big night. He beat AJ twice, one at Tottenham Hotspur, huge pay-per-view, one in Saudi Arabia, huge pay-per-view. He's the undisputed cruiserweight world champion. He's a unified world heavyweight champion. And perhaps the best stat of all, and we can never know this officially, but I'll tell you it's either true or very close to being true. Alexander Usyk's biggest payday is bigger than Tyson Fury's biggest payday.
And that would have been in a rematch with
Correct.
Anthony Joshua
Correct.
in
Which was a 50-50
Saudi
split.
last year.
So we can't say no one knows who he is and he don't make any money because he needs more respect.
That's a figure that's a figure that's out there. That's a figure.
And by the way, I've represented Alexander Usyk in 5 fights. Probably the easiest person to deal with in terms of Usyk and Alex Krasik.
Because it kind of suits one agenda for it to be portrayed, for Usyk to be portrayed as a guy who makes out he's a good guy.
His food.
And by the way, that some of the food has arrived here, little prawn balls, and they look, I can't even tell you how good they look.
Oh, mate.
It's absolutely ridiculous looking food. We'll try and plough on, but we may just have to have 1 or 2 culinary stops. Is that as good as it looks, Ed?
Unreal.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? That looks the absolute business, that then. We'll get a napkin in a second. We'll power through. Just quickly dealing with the weekend, a little bit of business. Felix Cash pulled out injured, and Galal Yafai, gold medalist from Tokyo, who was meant to fight in a couple of weeks' time in Texas, if I'm not mistaken, he's been pulled forward to the bill. Is Felix Cash, first of all, is Felix Cash okay? And is Galal ready?
Yeah, I mean, firstly, disappointed for Felix. It's so mad how this boxing world works. Galal Yafai, Olympic gold medalist, debuted at the O2, second fight Madison Square Garden, third fight Abu Dhabi, fourth fight was next week in San Antonio.
Yeah.
And when we made the fight, he's like, look, I want to box in America, but I'd like one in the UK. And we're like, do you know what? We've done the card and Jesse Rodriguez is on that show and I want to align you with the world champions in your weight class. And then Felix, was unable to fight this weekend. And we just phoned Galal and Rob yesterday and went,
Said yes.
Do you want to box at the O2? And they were like, yes, thank you very much. And they were ready, on weight. The Mexican got on a plane straight away.
Wow,
he's ready to go. It's a good fight, actually. So, great slot for Galal Yafai.
Great slot for him, and he's had that. Before we leave Joshua, I just want to go back to something that Joshua told me earlier in the week, which is going to be on 5 Live towards the weekend. And that was that there'll just be the one voice in the corner. And he said he's looking forward to that because Derek James rules. That's how he rules his corners. That's how he rules his fights. Because there has been a creeping amount of voices in Joshua's corner, it's fair to say, over the last 3 or 4 fights, especially the last 2. There were points there when Joshua's head was turning like he was watching a Wimbledon match and not sitting in a corner for 60 seconds, Eddie.
Yeah, I think, Josh, the job that Rob McCracken did with AJ was incredible. And they were so close. It was friend, trainer, manager, mentor, and for a long part of the career, it was one voice, like you said, and it was so effective for AJ because if AJ believes in a game plan and knows how to carry it out, he's very good at doing it.
He plugs into that, doesn't he?
Yeah. And if he gets it, he's confident, and that's how he gets his confidence. Not by someone going to him, "You're the best,
you're the best,
you're
best.
Great."
Yeah.
He just says, "No, okay, how do I do that?" And particularly the Usyk 1 fight, completely lost in terms of strategy. But what he tried to do, maybe as his relationship with Rob came to an end, was add elements so Rob was still in charge. Rob probably didn't like those elements, but he wanted to stay with AJ and support him. But AJ would bring in a trainer for offense, a trainer for defense, and Rob. And it just became, like you said, too many voices, too much of a mess. And now he's stripped it back. He's gone back to basics. Everything this week is speak to Derek, whatever Derek says, and that's where I think he needs to be. And Derek James is a fantastic trainer. Just won Trainer of the Year, so he's in good hands. If they gel together, and we'll see on Saturday, this could be the start of a great partnership.
Hold on a second, Eddie. That's AJ. More AJ in a minute after this break. And also, Conor Benn, yes, that story, it continues.
Match of the Day.
Top 10 podcast.
Now, you'll find the rest of our box sets to listen to.
The Match of the Day Top 10 podcast.
Listen only on BBC Sounds.
Eddie, I've got to ask you about a fight that's being talked about. June 3rd is a date that's being thrown out there. The two men in the ring might be Conor Benn and Chris Eubank Jr. It's been thrown about. Lots of people have got lots to say about it. Where are we with that? Where are we officially with that? And where do we stand with that?
Well, I've been told it's signed and it's done. It's definitely not. Conor Benn's had a number of offers internationally to fight. We know Manny Pacquiao, Kell Brook was in the office yesterday. He's desperate to fight Conor Benn as well. For me, the fight I want to make is the rescheduled Chris Eubank fight. And, we know we have a situation where he can't fight in the UK at the moment.
At the moment.
The British Boxing Board of Control have had plenty to say, especially in the last 24 hours, which is very unusual for them. But as I've said before, the ego is out of control from both sides. And this is why, at the moment, I feel it would be almost impossible for Conor Benn to actually get a fair hearing. I think people have got to understand their roles, their duties, their jurisdiction as well, and where they can operate and where their rules can take place. And this isn't a case of finding somewhere where Conor Benn can fight. Conor Benn can fight in any country in the world, but not in the UK. And we want that to change at the moment. But I've never seen the board behave like this. I mean, listen, it's never great when a fighter fails a drug test. We are 7 months now after the fact, and still every day this is a talking point. I don't mind, but there are agendas from some people. I'm sorry, that's the case. And for the board to talk about trying now to contact other people to stop an individual, an athlete, from competing with another commission or another territory is going to cause them a major problem. So, it's getting interesting. It's going to be a fun few days and weeks. Yeah,
it will be a fun few days and weeks. And what I find quite alarming about that, I mean, I've got no problem with the board being assertive and going over the front foot, because sometimes the board do sit back and are possibly and potentially a bit too passive. But what I find quite alarming about it is that there seems to be no move from the board. And Robert Smith and I get on really well. Is I want to see the board, this thing that you and I talked about in Liverpool a few weeks ago. I want to see the board, Connor's people, Eubank's people, all in a room, and some medical experts in there off the record. We'll leave our phones at the door, we'll leave our recording machines at the door, and we'll try and leave our egos at the door, which is
that's one of the biggest problems.
Absolutely, yeah.
You never see the board act like this.
Yeah, I've never ever.
Look, Tyson Fury had a very similar incident, and they never said a peep, right? So something's going on, and how do you expect Conor Benn right now? Conor Benn reads that, so I can fight in America. They're going to stop someone trying to compete with me. They're going to stop me trying to earn a living in jurisdictions where I'm licensed to fight. So they've got to be careful, in all honesty. And I tell you, like I said, I don't want to say too much right now, but rubbing people up the wrong way is never good. And it looks like there's been a lot of rubbing up the wrong way here. And we'll go down a dangerous path for the sport. The board made a big mistake. The board took 5 weeks to make a decision. What they should have done was have a hearing. They had plenty of time to get this heard. And now, after the fact, they want to have a hearing. They had time to do it before the fight. They made plenty of mistakes. And it gets right on my nerves that the board want to deflect all the blame on this to other people without taking responsibility about how they acted.
Mostly you.
They are the governing body of the sport. They are there to make the decisions. They want to hide behind, we were under pressure legally. No, make your decision, right? Grow some balls. If you want to do it now, you want to grow some balls. You had the chance. You should have had a hearing. You made everybody else look bad because you fumbled around and didn't make a decision. And the decision you made in the end, which was not in the best interests of the sport, could have made that decision on day one and would have saved everyone the aggravation. Conor would have gone through a hearing process and this would never have happened. I've said it before, I'll say it again. The board had a tough decision. But Robert Smith's got plenty to say at the moment, and it's going to be really interesting to see how this plays out.
When was the last time you and Robert had a conversation about this situation?
Not for a long time. Probably I mean, during the process, but particularly, and I remember the conversation and I remember every word said, the first test result that Conor Benn we received, which he received exactly the same time, we had a conversation on the phone. And I remember every word of that conversation. We did everything right through the whole process. They had a very difficult decision. They made many mistakes. We made mistakes. Sauer made mistakes. Everybody made mistakes because you're dealing with a fresh situation that you've not been in before.
It was changing by the hour.
Absolutely. But now, it's we've got some big breaking news coming soon, which I won't go into too much, but you're going to be able to watch all of these things, all of these issues unfold on your screen very soon.
Okay, that'd be good. And might we get closer to viewing that 270-plus page document?
Yeah, and actually, what
nice.
I've said before, I can't say it again, Conor needs to sit down with the board. But when they react in the way that they do, how do you expect him to believe, to want to sit down with that jurisdiction and also believe he's going to be treated fairly when they're making bizarre comments?
We need that meeting.
Calm
Eddie.
head.
We need
calm
that
heads.
No, we need that conference. We need that calm. We need that as egos at the door. We need to get some people in a room and have a little chat about this because I think you're a traditionalist in many ways as well, Ed. We can't keep portraying you as the young kid that came on the block. It was a long time ago now, son. It was a long time ago. But it would be great if we could just get some of this sorted. And you know what? After what we've had over the last 9 months, 10 months, 11 months with different fights and stuff being operated on out in the open, it'd be nice to keep it quiet until there's some solid information. By the way, how good is that food?
Unreal.
Yeah, it is, yeah. I'm holding back, you see that?
I know.
Because once you start,
I've forgotten all
you
about
can't
the
stop.
boxing board of control. I'm just on the prawn tempuras.
They're particularly good prawn tempura. By the way, when I was talking to AJ, he gave me a very funny line. When we were talking about Fury and Usyk, he started laughing. And this is what he had to say about the collapse of that fight.
I'm actually glad that Eddie didn't get the blame this time around. Because somehow, Eddie always gets the blame, even if it's not his fighter, right? So I feel sometimes there's an agenda against Eddie. He's came into the boxing industry and shook it up. So I know I'm going away from the Fury Usyk situation, but I'm glad that
wasn't his fault.
Yeah, it wasn't
Quotes
his
unquote.
fault. He's tried to make that fight a million times. Even at a time where I've just come off a loss, we was trying to make that fight last year, straight after 2 months after I'd lost to Usyk, but it didn't happen.
So AJ there, praising you and thankful that you didn't get blamed for the Fury Usyk fight collapsing. Although there are people with a conspiracy theory who believe it probably was your fault anyway.
Somewhere down the line, it was my fault. If in doubt, blame Eddie. I mean, it's always a good one to do in boxing.
Now, Jermaine Franklin, I'm a big fan of Jermaine Franklin. I like the fact that he's very much an old style fighter. And he's lost a bit of weight and he's looking better. I mean, he's never going to be like Ken Norton, is he? He's never going to look like AJ. That's just he's not built that way. Yeah,
I mean, I said he had an 8-pack, probably a slight exaggeration, but there was definitely some resemblance of some abdominal muscles there, which is very different to the fight with Dillian Whyte. He has lost, I think, 24 pounds.
That's what he said to me.
And he said that after the Dillian Whyte fight, I just went straight back into camp. Because probably he's thinking to himself, do you know what? I'm actually world class. He's telling me all these things. I'm thinking, bloody hell, why'd you have to do it now? But every time someone gets the opportunity against AJ, they train harder. They raise their game. They understand the spoils that come with victory. So I expect a very good Jermaine Franklin. He's been around. He's old school fighter, very good heavyweight, fast hands, bit small, probably the style that's actually not that suited to Anthony Joshua. Everyone talks about Andy Ruiz. He's not Andy Ruiz, but it's the same kind of mindset of the smaller fighter with fast hands. And he'll, if he's prepared to trade and throw with AJ, like Ruiz was, then it's very, very dangerous. What AJ's got to do in this fight is actually take Franklin's confidence away early, hit him hard early. If he lets Franklin get in his groove, slip and slide, go into the shell, catch and counter, it's going to be a very, very difficult night for Anthony.
And could end up going long that way.
Yeah.
And maybe not looking great. One of the things I like about Jermaine Franklin is that less than a year ago, he was working in that factory, gluing sheets of glass together to go into patio windows and working for minimum wage, hard hours. And that's genuine. And here's the transformation in that kid's life in a year is just another one of those fairy tales you add to that boxing book, that great boxing book, sort of a book of tales of redemption. And I like that about a kid.
Yeah. And you know that he comes from the school of hard knocks.
Absolutely.
You know what this means to him.
Yep.
Yeah. And when you've got a fighter like AJ that's achieved everything, right? Made a lot of money. When the going gets tough, in common sense terms, who you backing to come out the other side? The bloke that's achieved everything and got it all, or the guy that was working in a factory who has now found it all and he's going, this is just a start for me.
Can't believe this.
You know, that's when you're in with a hungry fighter, that's dangerous in itself. And you know, AJ's got to show his desire on Saturday night as well.
And all the great champions that we have that have come from very humble roots, hard roots, harsh roots, like AJ. You know, first time in the gym, he's got a tag on his ankle. Let's get that right. I mean, you know, that's the AJ that we love now, but that was back then. But they can't all be Marvin Hagler. They can't all have that ridiculous mindset. They can recreate it, some of them, but it's still hard. And AJ, I think AJ's capable of doing that. I've seen something. I know you're going to abuse me again. I've seen something in his eyes, Eddie.
Yeah.
I really
but
have.
I just think, like, when you love the sport and when you're a competitor, it's a bit like Canelo Alvarez. You know, I look at him train, I just think, how are you still going? You know, I mean,
Trains like he's penniless.
Boxing's a hungry man's sport, right? And AJ is willing to go out to Dallas for 12 weeks, live in a house around the corner from the gym, which is, you know, not the greatest of areas, and just graft, right? No frills, just hard work and a love for the game. And when you love the game and when you love competing and when you want it so bad, you're still that guy, you know? And but he's got to show that raw side. He's got to show that bad man side to him in this fight, you know, because I said to him in Dallas, I went, you do realise when you let your hands go, people are petrified of you. You're the most devastating combination puncher, in my opinion, in the heavyweight division. You know,
That includes Usyk in the second fight, by the way.
Yeah. But he's got to believe in it. And look, it's difficult to let your hands go against Usyk because he's everywhere, you know, and he's always putting you, offsetting you and getting you off balance to throw and making you doubt what you can throw and when you can throw it. But, you know, we want to see AJ land a shot, back Franklin up to the ropes and unload 8 or 9, 10 punch combination and take this guy out and make everyone say, AJ's back.
AJ's back indeed. Listen, Eddie, it's been an absolute pleasure and delight talking to you. I came up with a little idea there as you were talking now, and I know it's not unique because there's already a series on TV, but can you imagine if we could mock you up with a fat suit and a perm and some glasses, take you down to Australia or New Zealand, and you could try and launch a boxing promotional company. We film the whole lot, and we'll see how you go from scratch. So you're doing a reverse AJ. You're living in a B&B. Yeah. We're going to give you 10,000 New Zealand dollars, which won't even buy you this lunch we've had here, and I mean that nicely. And we'll give you 6 months to build. That's a good reality show. So
Don't ever count against me, Bunce.
No, I'm not.
Fat suit and a perm or not, we'll get it done.
No,
we'll get the job done, mate.
I've only said the fat suit and a perm because I really fancied a fat suit and a perm as well. That'd be great. Eddie, it's a delight and a pleasure talking to you, eating with you. It always is. We look forward to AJ at the weekend. We look forward to more developments in the Conor Ben ongoing story. Thanks so much for your time, Ed. I really appreciate that.
Cheers, mate.
Let's get ready to rumble!
5 Live Boxing.